Okay, Parshas Noach, 3 ideas. We'll see if we have time for all 3 of them. But the first idea is a very troubling Rashi. The Rashi, really, in the very beginning of the Sedra, the Parsha begins, Eile told us Noach ish Tzadik, Tomim Hoy B'Doreisov. So the Torah is very lavish with the praise of Noach HaTzadik. The Torah calls him a Tzadik, Tomim, he's perfect. Es Elokim is Halech Noach, and he walks with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. However, Rashi, based on Chazal, famously pick up on a slight lack, a slight criticism of Noach. It says, Tomim Hoya B'Doreisov, in his generations. Says Rashi, Yesh Mirabuseinu Darshim Osei L'Shvach. There are those who expound it positively, i.e., Kol Shekain, She'ilu Hoya B'Dar Tzadikim Hoya Tzadik Yoseh. If this is what you can achieve in a very lowly generation, can you imagine what he would be like if he had company like Avram Avinu? He'd be even greater. Yesh darshan l'shvach. V'yesh darshan osei lignai. And there are those who darshan it lignai, disparagingly, negatively. Lefi dairoi hoya tzaddik. Yeah, relative to his generation, he was a tzaddik. V'ilu hoya b'darsh l'Avram, lo hoya nechshav l'klum. He wouldn't be considered anything. And it's quite a strong lashon. Lo hoya nechshav l'klum. And the question, of course, is, like, if you've got the choice, why be Derish L'Gnai? What about Dan L'Kaf? It's a very strange thing. The Ma'arei Naim, one of the Talmidim of the Baal Shem Tov, he says the following. He asked the question, Eile told us Noach, he quotes the Rashi, Yesh Darshan L'Shvach, Yesh Darshan L'Gnai, V'tzarech L'Havin, Lama Darshan L'Gnai. Says the Ma'arei Naim, it's the second box on the page. If you're listening online, you can email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout. Tzarech lahavin lama darshan lignai. Why are you being darish lignai? Kiven sheyesh lidarish l'shvach. If you've got the option to be darish l'shvach, then why focus on the negative? Va'oid, and furthermore, halei hakosav koreas tzadik tomim. The Torah calls him a tzadik. He calls him tomim. So why are you sort of picking at the Dorosov and suggesting that he was lacking? The Sifsei Chachomim gives an answer. The Sifsei Chachomim is one of the famous commentaries on Rashi, and he says something which, if you look in the third box, which answers this question. Kosav Marsha, V'kasha, Heich Darshan Nignai Kiven Sho Tzadik. How can we be darish it negatively when the Torah testifies that Noach is a Tzadik? V'yesh Loima, says the Sifsei Chachomim, Shehu Soimech Al Ho'es Ho'elekim K'moshe Pirish Rashi. He's being soimech on the words, on Rashi's commentary, on the words, Es ho'elekim his halech noach. What is he referring to? So if you look at the Rashi on the bottom of the box, I bring that Rashi to explain it. Es ho'elekim his halech noach. It says in the Pasuk, Eile teldus Noach, Noach ish tzadik tomai b'doreisov, Es ho'elekim his halech noach. Says Rashi, Uba Avraham hu omer his halech lefonai. Asher his halachti lefonov. Noach hoyatzorech tza'ad l'soimchoi. Noach needed a sort of a stick to lean on. Aval Avram hoya mischazik mahalech betzitko me'elov. Avram was self-generating. His righteousness was from within. He didn't need the support that Noach needed. That's Rashi's commentary on the words Es ho'elekim es halech Noach. If that is the case, if you see in the words themselves Es ho'elekim es halech Noach, that Noach was inferior to Avraham, that he needed that sort of crutch to lean on. So therefore, Yesh Darshan Nignai, there must be something missing a little bit. And therefore, but the Rosov tells me that there's something missing. Okay, that's the Sifsei Chachomim. The Reb Chaim Hager of Kozov, in his Sefer, he's got in the Hisofas at the back of the Sefer, in Teras Chaim, he says a very beautiful diuk. If you look carefully at the Rashi, look at the top Rashi. It says, Yesh merabuseinu darshim osei l'shvach, v'yesh darshim osei l'gnai. So take a look at the Teras Chaim. Yesh merabuseinu darshim osei l'shvach, v'yesh darshim osei l'gnai. Look at the diuk he makes. Etzel hashvach. For the positive interpretation, Kosov, it's written, Yesh merabuseinu darshim. Our rabbis, our teachers, are darshim l'shvach. Ve'ilu achakach kosav v'yesh darshan lignai. No Rabbi Seinu over there. Who's darshan lignai? People who are not Rabbi Seinu. Elevated people will find the positive. People who are on a lower madrega, they'll start picking and they'll point out the negative. Kan likos Rabbeinu, ki eila shedarshin lignai elim Rabbeinu. Because those people who look at the negative and they try and make it less than it may be, they're not Rabbeinu. Ki Rabbeinu elim darshin lignai. Because our real Rabbeinu, they are darsh l'shvach, not lignai. Very beautiful diuk. And I'll tell you something interesting. When you wear glasses which are yesh darshan l'shvach, not darshan lignai, and you see the positive in things, you look at the world totally differently. Just now, this week, I'll tell you something fascinating. I had a zchus to be in Eretz Yisrael for Sukkot. And we had to cancel Shiur last week because the flight was cancelled. So we had an interesting journey home. I'm not saying home, journey back. And we had to drive to Eilat to get a plane, to get a charter plane, to get back to London. My students in school would have been very happy if I would have stayed in Eretz Yisrael for a few more weeks. But anyway, we needed to get back. So the next day, we managed to get seats on the charter plane. My wife and the kids on one flight, and then me and a few of the other kids on another flight. And we, of course, wanted to go on one flight. So the travel agent said it was a scramble to get tickets. It was impossible to get tickets. So the travel agent said, look, your wife's on the 9:30 flight. You're on the 1:30 flight. After the 9:30 flight closes, like at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, go to the desk, and maybe there'll be a couple of seats here and there, and you'll be able to get on. Fine, so I did that. And we were three, me and two of the boys. And I went to the desk and I said, listen, are there any possibility, are there any more seats available? You close check-in, maybe someone overslept. It was a lot, you had to be there at 5 in the morning, whatever time. So he said, yeah, there are 2 seats. It didn't help me because I needed 3. But either way, I was by the front desk. And because I was at the front desk at that moment, I overheard a conversation which you only hear in Eretz Yisrael, and it was such a precious conversation. I was standing there, trying to find out, and all of a sudden this Hasidic guy from New York goes over to the front desk, and he says to the lady, who's a very secular Chiloni Israeli air stewardess who must live near Eilat or somewhere near there, he said to her, I'm very grateful that you've come so early in the morning and that you're helping us all out, and I would like to give you and your colleagues a tip, to give you something to thank you. So I thought, that's very nice. She looked at him and she said, Toda, thank you very much, but whatever you were going to give me and my colleagues, do me a favor, give it to Tzahal. There's a difficult situation here, give it to Tzahal. I thought, that's very nice of her. And then he looked back at her, this Hasidic guy, and he said to her, you should know that this morning I gave a check for $500,000 to Tzahal. So I was, whoa. End of conversation. They move off in their way, they're very nice. What a precious conversation. And what did I learn from there? When everyone's trying to follow and speaking to people in Eretz Yisrael, everyone's got connections. But what you see at the moment is everyone is trying to do what they can to help. Whether it's an air stewardess who gets up early in the morning to help people who are in distress and trying to get to fly various places, whether it's a Hasidic guy who wants to just help Tzahal in whatever way he can. I called my brother in Eretz Yisrael. So he told me, I said, what are you up to? So he said he goes to the bakeries, he was buying a whole bunch of schnitzels, and he was driving to the north. He went to an army base, he heard there was some chayalim who needed some food. So he drives up there, and then he's driving cars back. I said, what do you mean you're driving cars back? So he explained to me that on last Shabbos, when it all happened, thousands of young men got the call, they had to rush, pikuach nefesh, you got to go. So they got in their cars, they rushed to their bases, which could be well up north, a couple of hours drive, and they're there, and they're still there. But the wife needs the car at home. So who's going to drive the car back? So my brother and a few others, they're going up north to drive cars back and he said he drove a car back to Efrat from up north somewhere, and the wife had baked him a cake, and it's just amazing. She's standing there so grateful that she's got a car back, that some stranger had gone up north to drive her family car back to Efrat. She baked and my brother saying, look, you keep the cake and give it to your kids. Mi kam Yisrael. And you just hear the chesed that's going on, and it's just astonishing. Miss Hashem, we should be zocher that in the zechus of the achtus and the yesh darshim l'shvach, that we should have Yeshua's and Basuras Tova soon. Let's carry on. A very, very interesting idea I saw in the name of someone, I don't know who it is, Rabbi Lezer Castiel, in his sefer called Siman Labonim. He says a beautiful, a very geschmacka idea. At the end of the Sedra, it talks about the Tower of Bovel, this famous tower. So take a look at paragraph 2, the first box. Vayomer ish el reyehu, hova nilbana levenim. Let's build bricks. V'nisrefal esreifa, and we'll burn it. V'atihi lohem halveino le'evel, and using these bricks, we'll build this big structure. Vayomeru hova nivne lonu ira migdal, v'rosh b'shamayim v'naseh lonu shein. We're going to build it, and this will give us a name, and this will be our endeavor. Vayeret Hashem niros esoir es hamigdal asher bonu bnei Adam. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, came down and looked at what they were building. Says Rashi, levenim she'ein avonim beBovel, because there were no avonim in Bovel shehi bika, i.e., they had to build bricks. They made bricks. The difficulty is, why did they make bricks? Why didn't they just use the stone that was in the ground? You hew the stone, and that's your construction. You don't have to actually make bricks. You can use the natural stone that's in the ground. Take a look at the Siman Labonim. Anshe Bovel Madgishim, the people of Bovel were highlighting, emphasizing, as Hayetzira Ha'enoshis, human endeavor. Migdal Bovel Mahav Semel Lo'etzemes Ha'odom V'yecholto. This tower is a symbol of human ability. Ve'es Migdal Asher Bonu B'nei Ha'odom, the Migdal which the human beings built. Zu Ha'amira Hayetzis Mi Migdal Bovel. This is really the expression that comes out. B'nei ha'adam boinim b'yedeihem, they're building with their own hands. L'loi kol ezra min meromim. They're not using the natural resources at all because they don't want to acknowledge that there's a Rabbeinu Shloim. They don't want to acknowledge that there is a creator of the world. They want to do it all themselves. They're in denial, as it were. They don't want to rely on teva, on the natural stones that are in the ground. Next paragraph. Migdal Bovel Yisamol Yosem Mikoles es Kfiyas Hatova. Really, it's a denial of all the good. Vayered Hashem Liros Esoev es Hamigdal Shebonu Bnei Adam Bnei Ha'adam. What does it mean, Bnei Ha'adam? The Medrash says HaKadosh Baruch Hu came down and saw the Migdal that they built, that the Bnei Adam built. Who's Bnei Adam? Says the Medrash, Bnei Adam Harishin Shekofar B'Tova. The people who built the Tower of Babel were the sons of Adam Harishin, in as much as they were also Kofar B'Tova. They ignored the good that Hashem had done. Anshe Babel lo muchonim lahakir b'mechul lateva. They didn't want to use the natural resources. V'lashem kach he ma'atzimin es hesogei ha'adam. And therefore, they were sort of using the natural. They wanted to highlight man's creativity and remove any hint of help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Turn over the page. Look at the next paragraph. Now this is amazing. El mul migdal bovel omedes par siacheres behemshech sefer Bereshis. You see another theme, a continued theme on this idea. Bidmus sulam hamutzav arzo v'reishim agia shamaymo. Parshas Vayetze. Fast forward a few sedras. Yaakov Avinu is running away from Esav, and he has the famous dream with the sulam mutzav arzo magia shamaymo. Hasulam maschil me'ashamayim. Really, the ladder comes down from heaven. V'raglov mutzaves al oretz, and the legs of the ladder are on the ground. Me'parshas hasulam anu lemedim ala nova. That is a symbol of humility. Why? Because sulam is b'gematria Sinai. The gematria of sulam, samach lamed mem, 60, 30, and 40. That's 150. Is the same gematria as Sinai. Boy Yarda HaTorah Mishamayim. That's where Torah came down from heaven. Gam b'Parshas HaSulam Mufis Avonim. And interestingly, in the Parsha of the Sulam, you have the usage of the words Avonim, which means natural stones. No levanim, no bricks over there, natural stones. Vayifka b'mokum vayolen sham ki ba shemesh. What happened? Yaakov Avinu was traveling. The sun set early. He takes the natural stones. Rosh Shel Yaakov Tefisas Olam, the head of Yaakov Avinu, which means his whole world. Machshavos, of his thoughts, his ideas. Nishanim alavonim, are resting on stones. Ha'even kafishi teva, because stones are natural. Leloi mureves anoshis melachtius. There's no human involvement whatsoever. He takes the natural elements. That's the total opposite of the Tower of Babel. Because there they didn't want to use the natural stones. They wanted to make bricks to highlight man's creativity and their own sort of human endeavor, and just to remove any hint of help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The contrast to that is Yaakov Avinu. This is where the Beis HaMikdash is going to be. This is the bridge between heaven and earth. He makes a matzeva. You go to the coastal nowadays, and your mamish a stone's throw, literally, to where this stone is, where the Akedah happens, and where Yaakov Avinu took the stone and made this matzeva and had the dream with a ladder. Because he realizes that, as we'll see now, Hashimush Even, the usage of the stone, his sleeping on that stone, it shows the humility of Yaakov Avinu. And so too, Kach b'binyan HaMizbeach, it flows so beautifully. When they built the Mizbeach in the Beis HaMikdash and in the Mishkan, b'lo shimush b'kli barzel, you weren't allowed to use hammers and chisels. It says, "Mizbeach avonim taseli lo sivne es hen gozis ki char b'chol naftaleh mechaleho." You're not allowed to use chisels and things. You've got to use the natural resources, the proper the stones, the original stones. V'kach gam b'binyan hamikdash. It says, when they built the Beis Hamikdash, it says in Melachim, "Vayetzav hamelach vayisu avonim gedolos, avonim yikaros liyaseh debayis, v'habayis b'konosei shel oven shlomo kol kli barzel lo nishma b'bayis b'himanosei." They weren't allowed to use any manufacturing equipment. Why? Because they wanted to show that it's all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They didn't want to highlight human endeavor. It's the opposite of the Tower of Babel. El mul migdal Bavel nitzav migdal acher. So you see that on one hand you have the Migdal Bavel, where they didn't want to use any human natural resources, and they wanted to show human endeavor and deny any hint of help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then on the other hand, you have the Beis HaMikdash, you have Yaakov Avinu, you have the Mizbeach, where we're relying on the natural resources, saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is all from you. We have to use this. I don't want to sort of express my own involvement here. This is all from you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. El mul migdal bavel nitzal migdal acher. And therefore he concludes and he says, there's going to be another migdal. Migdal David Savareich Bonu Letalpios, it says in Shiur. What does that mean? Al Migdal David, on the Tower of David, it says, Dorshim Chazal, Zeh Beis HaMikdash. What does it mean? Bonu Letalpios. Mahu Letalpios, Tal Shekol Pios Poinim Elov. It's the tower where every mouth turns to. Zehu HaMigdal HaTfila VaHapniel Borei Olam. It's the place where we turn to with our mouths, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the sort of the antithesis of the Migdal Bavel is the Beis HaMikdash. That we express that everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the Talpios, it's the tower where all our mouths turn to, and that's the real tower. That's the tower which is the contrast to the Tower of Bavel. Astonishing. Interestingly, the Torah says, "Vayichtevim al shnei luches avonim v'yitnu elai." When it comes to Matan Torah, it's not the venim. We don't use bricks, we use avonim. Again, avonim is the natural resource where we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's all from you. There's no human endeavor. We didn't make the bricks because that demonstrates that we don't need HaKadosh Baruch Hu's natural resources. We want to show that everything we need the help of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We want to sort of take away human endeavor in the whole process. And interestingly, it's true in life today. Despite any medical advances that we have in the 21st century, you go to the doctor and you have 21st century medical intervention. But still, the halacha says, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch brings, hanichnas lahakis dam. Back in the day, they would let blood, but nowadays, kodem sheyechol ishta yasa ezeh david refuah. Anytime you take a Panadol, you take a paracetamol, you should yispalel kodem atfilah k'tzar. You should say a short tefillah. What should you say? Yiros milfonecha Hashem Elokai v'Elokai v'Yisai sheyeh li eisek zeh l'refuah ki roif chilamata. that you recognize that ultimately it all comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That really is what the Beis HaMikdash was. That's the Mishkan, that's the Sulam of Yaakov Avinu. And in contrast to the Tower of Babel, where they want to try and remove any hint of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's involvement, and therefore they make Levanim, they don't use natural resources, they try and make everything themselves. Very beautiful insights. Let's just finish with one final observation. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that there are 10 generations from Adam to Noach, and 10 generations from Noach to Avram Avinu. It says the Mishnah, Asara Doros, if you look at the penultimate box on the page, is the Perek K Mishnah based in Avos. Asara Doros min Noach ad Avraham. Why? Lohodia kama erech apayim lefonov, how patient HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. Shekara Doros hayimachis neboyin ad sheba Avram v'kibel schar kulo. That he was so patient that for 10 generations he waited for Avram Avinu, and Avraham gets the schar of all 10 generations. That's the famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Asks Rabbi Yosef Leib Bloch, one of the Telz Rosh Hashivas, in Shiur Das, a great question. Listen to this, look at the bottom box. I don't understand what he's saying. Question number 1. Avram Avinu took the schar of all those 10 generations. What schar are we talking about? They didn't have any schar. They were Rishoyim. So what, you're going to get the schar of all these wicked people. What schar are we talking about? Is that such a great thing? That's number 1. Number 2, v'chein tomuhu, eich ze'ef sheyimse schar al zeh la'acher. How does that work? Where's the justice? How can he be entitled to the schar that somebody else gets? It seems to be an unjust system. So there was some small good things that they did. That's transferred to Avram Avinu's account. Why? It's not fair. Says Rav Bloch, very interesting insight. Aval hu she'amarnu, ki kan limdunu Chazal. Here Chazal are teaching us. At kama b'tiva shel ha'odam hu lisrashe me'achirim. At the end of the day, it's so easy to be influenced by the society in which we live. That's natural. That's just, you take a boy from England and he goes to yeshiva, and all of a sudden he's seeing boys from America, from Eretz Yisrael, from South Africa, from Australia. They're all Jewish, and they've all been to Jewish schools and they're Jewish homes, but then they come together in one yeshiva. They're all very different. How do you explain this difference? The answer is they're all mushbah from the society in which they live. That's just life. That's how it works. Kol shekain, how much more so says the Shiur Das, im rabim heim, if you're talking about the majority, there are lots of people, the whole society. Uma gam im roiv ha'olam richka miderech Hashem. What if the whole world is sort of in denial of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's existence? Oz b'kiflaim hu ha'meretz asher yidrish leman hisnake ala yesef v'lishma ala tzad hanochel. The fortitude it's going to take for Avram Avinu to stay on the right path is huge. Haschar hakavu le'adam libli sur miderech Hashem. What a schar he's going to get for swimming against the tide. There's no limits. There's no way to gauge. It's inestimable. The schar that's hidden away for him. Last line. It is fair. It is fair that Avram Avinu gets the schar that they were going to get. That it's lost for them because of their guilt. Why is it fair? Because they corrupted the world and created an influence on all those around him. For Avram Avinu to overcome that and to withstand that temptation and not to be to swim against the tide, it's only fair that you take away their guilt and whatever should have come to them. I had to fight harder because of you. And therefore it's only fair that the schar that was destined for them is going to go to Avram Avinu. That's what it means. Because they have caused me to work so much harder. That's the point. And therefore there is a justice to the whole system. So what have we seen this evening? 3 ideas. The first is the beginning of the Parsha, Yesh Doshim L'Shvach, Yesh Doshim L'Gnai. Why be Dorish L'Gnai at all? So we saw the Sifsei Chomim because Eselakim is Halech Noach suggests that it was quite different to Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was self-generating Sidkus and Noach not, and therefore there is an opening, if you like, B'Dorosov to suggest that it's Dorshim L'Gnai. Im Kol Zeh, the Torah Chaim makes that beautiful diuk. Yesh Mirabbi Seinu Dorshim L'Shvach. Who is it who is Derish Shlach? Rabbi Seinu, because that's what Rabbi Seinu do. People who are not Rabbi Seinu, they're Derish Lignai. It's important to always focus and look at the good in others. And then you've got the beautiful lesson from the Tower of Bovel, from the Siman Lebonim. It keeps emphasizing Levanim. Levanim, bricks. I'm not going to use natural resources. I want to show human endeavor to highlight man's creativity and to remove any hint of help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The focus is on their strength, their ingenuity, their creativity, and therefore there's no room for avonim. Masha'enken Yaakov Avinu, and the story of the Beis Hamikdash, everything is Even, 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 because we want to involve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our endeavors. We want to not focus on our own strength and ingenuity and creativity. We want to realize that everything ultimately comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore the Mizbeach, the Beis Hamikdash, the everything, the Luchais, everything is avonim. That ultimately is coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, and then lastly, that Avram's reward for the 10 generations, how can that be fair? The Teretz is, says Rav Bloch, that it is fair, because everyone is mushpach from their environment, and therefore you have caused me to work so much harder, therefore it's fair that I'm going to get the schar that was destined for those 10 generations. Okay, we'll leave it there.